a lot of their manufacturing business to Mexico. I'm just notifying John Deere right now. If you do that, we're putting a 200% tariff on everything that you want to sell into the United States.
You'd think one of the most iconic farming equipment makers in America would always stand side by side with the nation's leaders. But in a twist that left everyone stunned, John Deere made a bold move that sent Donald Trump into a fury and put American farmers right in the middle of an explosive controversy. The question is, why did this corporate giant decide to expand internationally when so many expected it to keep its roots firmly in rural America? And how did Trump's threat of a massive tariff backfire in ways no one saw coming? Let's dive into a story that has the power to reshape the farming industry and challenge the very idea of what it means to be made in the USA. John Deere isn't just another big company. For decades, its green and yellow tractors have symbolized the heart and soul of American agriculture. Farmers have trusted the brand through booms and busts, passing down John Deere loyalty from one generation to the next. That's precisely why their decision to shift parts of their manufacturing overseas felt like a slap in the face to many who believed that, if any company would remain America first, it was John Deere. But no one makes such a drastic choice just for the fun of it. The company was battling rising labor costs, global competition, and supply chain hurdles that make it difficult to keep every single operation on American soil. So, executives quietly decided to expand into new territories, hoping to tap cheaper labor and meet the growing demand for farming equipment across Asia and South America. They likely expected a bit of pushback, but nothing on the scale of the firestorm about to erupt. When Donald Trump learned about John Deere's plans, he wasn't just upset, he felt personally betrayed. After all, he'd built a political brand on bringing factories back to the United States and punishing any business that dared to ship jobs overseas. At a rally packed with supporters, he singled out John Deere, calling them disloyal for turning their backs on American workers. Then came the threat, a 200% tariff on any John Deere products made outside the country. It sounded like the kind of move that would send corporate leaders scrambling to apologize, but John Deere didn't budge. Instead, they doubled down, insisting that going global was the only way to remain competitive in a world where farmers everywhere want high-tech equipment. Their refusal to fold only inflamed Trump further, prompting him to call for boycotts and declare that John Deere had crossed a line. Supporters cheered, but behind the scenes, many farmers began to worry that they might soon pay a hefty price for all this political theater. For the farmers who form the backbone of small towns across the United States, this was a nightmare scenario. They've relied on John Deere equipment for everything from planting seeds to harvesting crops, all while voting for Trump in hopes he'd protect rural America. Now, the brand they loved and the leader they trusted were feuding, and the fallout threatened to raise equipment prices and strain supply lines. Some farmers immediately sided with Trump. They declared John Deere had stabbed them in the back and vowed never to buy another green tractor. A few even traded in their Deere machinery for Case IH or Kubota models, hoping to make a statement. Others weren't so sure. They pointed out that manufacturing costs in the U.S. are undeniably high and that if John Deere couldn't compete globally, someone else would potentially leaving American workers worse off in the long run. Then came the biggest fear of all. If the tariff war actually happened, it could skyrocket prices for tractors and parts, crippling smaller operations already struggling with tight margins and unpredictable weather conditions. Many farmers found themselves torn between loyalty to an American tradition and the harsh realities of modern agriculture. It's easy to forget that the U.S. is the only place with a thriving agricultural scene. Countries like Brazil, India, and China have rapidly growing farming industries, and someone has to supply them with machinery. John Deere looked at that potential and saw a golden opportunity. By setting up new plants abroad, the company could cut certain costs and avoid local tariffs in emerging markets. It also meant they could sidestep potential retaliation. If the US slapped them with a giant tax for building products overseas, foreign governments might do the same if equipment was made in America. In other words, John Deere believed it had no choice but to go global to survive. Critics accused the company of chasing bigger profits and ignoring its American roots. Supporters countered that it was just smart business. Ford, Caterpillar, and other industrial giants had done similar things for decades. Yet, for all the financial logic behind the move, the cultural backlash was severe. In the eyes of certain voters and politicians, John Deere was turning its back on the rural communities that made it a household name. On Wall Street, loyalty to any politician is overshadowed by the quest for profits. So, when Trump slammed John Deere publicly, investors had to decide if this would hurt the company's share price or if it was just another bump in the road. For a moment, Deere's stock became a roller coaster, surging and plunging as traders struggled to predict whether a 200% tariff might actually become reality. Some analysts believed John Deere was making the right long-term decision. By diversifying manufacturing operations, they could weather trade conflicts and capture market share in booming regions worldwide. Others worried that the outrage from American farmers, still a huge chunk of Deere's customer base, could do serious damage. Stockholders also remembered past trade wars. Certain tariffs can backfire, driving up costs for US-based manufacturers that rely on imported parts or raw materials. It was a waiting game that turned into a standoff, with investors watching the headlines just as nervously as the farmers. Trump's promise to bring factory jobs back hinged on a straightforward idea: companies that don't keep production in America would face penalties. But the brutal truth is many manufacturing positions vanished because of automation, not just outsourcing. Assembly lines once requiring hundreds of workers can now run with fewer employees, thanks to advanced robotics. Even if a multinational corporation opened a massive plant in the Midwest, it might rely on machines and software more than manpower. Then there's the ever-present cost factor. American workers deserve fair wages and benefits, which make labor more expensive compared to developing countries. Environmental regulations also add costs, although many argue they're necessary for public health and sustainability. Plus, global supply chains are deeply interconnected. To build a tractor or a combine, you need parts from all over the planet, some of which just aren't produced in the US anymore. Reversing these trends isn't as simple as passing a new law or slapping on tariffs. It requires a total overhaul of workforce training, infrastructure investment, and a willingness among consumers to pay higher prices for strictly American-made goods. Even before this clash erupted, rural towns were already in rough shape. Crop prices fluctuate constantly, weather extremes threaten harvest, and small farms fight to stay profitable in a market that often favors large-scale operations. Now, add a possible equipment tariff war to the mix, and it's a recipe for even deeper economic pain. If costs for tractors, parts, and maintenance soar, family-run farms could feel the squeeze most intensely, forcing some to merge or shut down. But adversity can also trigger new ideas. Faced with uncertainty, a handful of farmers have begun adopting homegrown solutions, repairing equipment themselves, buying used machinery, or even shifting toward more niche markets like organic produce. In some regions, cooperatives have popped up, where several farms pool resources to share equipment costs. Others look for cheaper brands abroad, though that carries its own complications. These small yet creative adaptations hint at how farmers might navigate unpredictable trade conditions. Still, there's only so much individuals can do when policy battles threaten to upend entire supply chains. By all appearances, neither side wants to blink first. Trump built his entire public image on never backing down. Once he picks a fight, he digs in and applies pressure until the other side yields. John Deere is equally entrenched. Their multi-year strategy to expand overseas wasn't a whim. They see this as the key to dominating global agriculture for decades to come, which means they won't reverse course simply because a president demands it. This standoff is more than symbolic. If Trump cracks down and John Deere suffers, it proves that he can use political influence to change corporate behavior. If John Deere weathers the storm and thrives, it signals that major companies can outlast even the fiercest political heat. And caught in between are families who rely on John Deere's machines for their livelihoods. The drama could escalate if the administration attempts new taxes, regulations, or social media campaigns aimed at shaming the company, pushing us closer to a test of how much punishment American businesses can endure before they full-door flee. Altogether, the broader farming equipment market is massive, and John Deere is the only heavyweight. Case IH, New Holland, Kubota, and others have been slowly chipping away at Deere's market share. If enough farmers truly boycott or drift away from Deere because of high costs or political anger, these alternatives are poised to swoop in. Case IH touts advanced technology. Kubota has made a name for reliability, and Mahindra's tractors are famously budget-friendly, especially for smaller farms. As older farmers retire and younger generations take over, brand loyalty may not be as ironclad as before. That leaves an opening for new players, including startups focusing on electric or autonomous tractors. A shift in consumer preferences or a sudden price hike for John Deere products could create a golden opportunity for these lesser-known brands to gain ground. But winning farmers' trust requires more than flashy features. They want parts, service, and stability, something Deere has provided for over a century. Still, if there's ever been a moment for competitors to pounce, this is it. Beyond the established companies, a wave of smaller manufacturers and tech startups is seeing potential in agriculture. Electric tractor prototypes, AI-driven crop management, and robotic harvesting tools are being tested on farms across the country. Although John Deere invests heavily in innovation, its feud with the Trump administration could become a distraction at a critical time. If key resources and attention shift to damage control, it might slow the company's research into next-generation farming solutions. This opens the door for creative newcomers. Brands like Fendt, Branson, and emerging electric tractor companies might snag a chunk of the market if they can provide reliable technology at a competitive price point. In an era where sustainability is increasingly important to consumers, these startups can attract farmers looking to reduce emissions or save on fuel costs. But it's a long road to gain the same trust John Deere has earned over decades. Farmers need proof test results, testimonials, and readily available parts before abandoning equipment that's served them well. However, every tenth statement from Trump or every rumored tariff hike could nudge a few more customers to explore something different. In a world where politics and business often clash, the John Deere saga stands out because it touches the very heart of rural America. We're watching a legendary brand expand overseas and a political figure determined to punish that choice in the name of bringing jobs back. Yet beneath all the drama lies a deeper question. In an era defined by global trade and lightning-fast automation, can we truly return to the days when manufacturing was purely local? No matter who wins, the consequences will ripple through family farms, rural towns, and corporate boardrooms. If tariffs go up, equipment costs could cripple small operations. If John Deere stands firm and shrugs off the backlash, it might reinforce the idea that American-made loyalty has limits when corporate survival is on the line. Meanwhile, other brands are waiting in the wings, ready to scoop up customers who can't stomach either the political controversy or the rising prices. So, is this a betrayal of American workers, or just a global company doing what it must to survive? Should farmers sacrifice their go-to brand, or cling to the trust John Deere has built over generations? Perhaps there's no simple answer. One thing is certain: this showdown has become a defining moment for American manufacturing, and it forces everyone to reckon with how we'll keep our farms thriving in a world that's more interconnected and more unpredictable than ever before. If you like this video, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more awesome contents.